It's 2030. You reach into your pocket. You find the same green paper but with very different power. But how much of today does $1 still buy in 2030? Well, by 2030 the dollar still looks the same, but what it can actually do might be your worst nightmare. Think about a $1 bill for a second. You could take a dollar from 1990, or even earlier, and put it next to one from today. Most people wouldn't notice much difference. But look around you for a second. Phones replaced wallets. Cards replaced cash. Taps replaced swipes. Entire industries showed up and disappeared. The world moved fast. However, the dollar didn't. That familiarity is comforting and also misleading. But that's not how cash actually evolves. When the government redesigns money, it focuses on the bills that matter most. The higher the value, the bigger the target for counterfeiting, and the more effort goes into protection. That's why 20s, 50s, and 100s get the upgrades first. The $1 bill sits at the bottom of that list, but would never vanish. By 2030, the most likely reality is simple. It doesn't change because it doesn't need to, at least, not in the eyes of the system. Now compare that to higher notes. Those are getting more complex. Holograms that shift when you tilt the bill. Inks that change color under light. Raised features you can feel with your fingers, added to help people with visual impairments and to make counterfeiting harder. By 2030, the $20 bill is expected to look very different from the one we know today. And most likely, Harriet Tubman on the front. The $1 bill survives not because it's powerful, but because it's familiar. It remains the same to make you feel like it still has value. But we all know, its value is just not the same. Now it barely works in those small moments. Tips. Change. Cash drawers. Emergency backups. And mostly, it's never enough. But that raises the next question. If the dollar still exists, but does less, how often will people actually physically use it? Well, we know how cash is disappearing. But in 2022, cash still handled about 22% of all payments, including checks and money orders. By 2024, that number dropped to around 14%. And looking ahead to 2030, it's easy to imagine cash handling less than 10% of transactions in most places. But if dollars aren't moving as paper anymore, if cash is shrinking in daily life, where are they moving? Your phone. When people hear digital dollar, they often imagine the government handing out a new app or a shiny Fed-issued coin you can spend on your phone. That's not what's coming. A digital dollar isn't a Fed coin for everyday people. The US government has been cautious. In 2025, the Fed made it clear, no retail CBDC, while current leadership is in place. And an executive order explicitly blocked federal agencies from creating one. Political resistance is strong. People worry about privacy, control, and the power to track every transaction. So the path for the digital dollar is different. It isn't about replacing cash or cards. It's about moving dollars faster, safer, and smarter across the systems we already use. Banks, apps, payment networks, these are the rails. The Fed provides the backbone through infrastructure like FedNow, but it doesn't put a coin in your pocket. This approach lets dollars go digital without turning money into a government tool. Even as cash changes at home, the dollar's influence stretches across the globe. It isn't just paper or numbers on a screen, it's the world's main reserve currency. Around 58 to 60% of global foreign exchange reserves are held in dollars. Most international trade, from oil to commodities, is priced in dollars. And nearly half of cross-border payments move through US-linked systems like SWIFT. That dominance didn't appear overnight, and it isn't guaranteed forever. Countries are slowly diversifying. Central banks are buying gold. Nations like China are building alternative payment networks, like M-Bridge, and promoting the digital yuan for international trade. Europe, Japan, and other regions are experimenting with similar systems. But the change is gradual. Even by 2030, the dollar is likely to remain the world's #1 currency. its share of global reserves might slip slightly, maybe to around 50 to 55%. Cross-border payment volumes may edge down a little, but it will still lead the pack. The dollar is still the anchor. It still sets the price, still underpins trade, and still moves global finance. But it isn't alone anymore. Other currencies, gold, and new digital rails are rising quietly alongside it. Because when something looks the same for a long time, we assume it works the same way. But money doesn't work like that. That's when inflation comes in. However, the term is more than inflation happening behind the scenes right now. By 2025 and 2026, inflation in the US isn't in crisis mode. And that's exactly what makes it dangerous. The Federal Reserve targets about 2% inflation over time. That's the plan. And most forecasts expect inflation to hover right around that level through 2030. Inflation doesn't need to explode to show that it's there. It works best when it's quiet. You don't notice it when coffee goes up 10 cents, or when a subscription adds $1. Each increase feels small, easy to ignore. But inflation compounds. Every year stacks on the last. What seems harmless in year 1 becomes real in year 5. That's where people get it wrong. They think inflation only matters when it's extreme. But what does that actually do to a single dollar? Let's put real numbers on this. Start with the baseline most economists agree on. About 2.3% inflation per year. That's right in the middle of the normal range. Now stretch that across 5 years, from 2025 to 2030. When inflation compounds at that pace, overall prices end up about 12% higher. Things just cost a little more each year, and those increases stack. And here's what that means for a single dollar. A dollar in 2030 would buy what about 89 cents bought in 2025. Put another way, you lose a little over a dime of buying power, even though nothing bad happened. Like, think of a loaf of bread that costs $1 today. By 2030, that same loaf would cost about $1.12. Your single dollar now only buys about 3/4 of the loaf. Now let's look at the edges. Just to be fair, in a lower inflation world, around 1.5% a year, prices rise slowly. After 5 years, $1 would still be worth about 93 cents in 2025 terms. That's the good case. On the higher end, still very realistic, say inflation runs closer to 3.5% a year. After 5 years, prices are nearly 19% higher. That same dollar now feels like 84 cents. So by 2030, the range is clear. $1 buys somewhere between 84 and 93 cents of today's stuff. Most likely it lands right in the middle, around 88 or 89 cents. Like, imagine something that costs $10 today. In the low inflation case, it's about $10.75 by 2030. In the higher inflation case, it's closer to $11.90. This doesn't require a collapse. No hyperinflation. It just requires time. By 2030, the dollar is still the dollar. Okay, but what does that actually feel like in real life? Because money only really makes sense when you picture using it. So let's bring that dollar into everyday life. Think about a cheap coffee. In 2025, you might still find one for around $2 at a convenience store or a fast food counter. By 2030, with prices rising about 12%, that same coffee is closer to $2.25. Your $1 doesn't buy the coffee. It just covers part of it. Look at a bus or train ride. Many cities already charge close to $3. By 2030, that fare nudges a little higher. $3.10, $3.20. Again, $1 helps, but it doesn't get you on the bus by itself. Now think about digital stuff. A simple in-app purchase that costs 99 cents today slowly creeps up. $1.29, $1.49. Your dollar doesn't quite fit anymore. It comes up short. This is the pattern everywhere. The dollar hasn't become useless. It's just been demoted. In 2030, $1 isn't really a payment. It's a contribution. It's the first piece of a price, not the whole thing. You see this clearly in how things are sold now. It knocks a little off your total. It helps smooth the checkout. It fills a gap, but it rarely finishes the job. That's the key shift. A dollar works best inside larger systems now. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and if this got you thinking more about money, make sure to check the various money laundering techniques people use literally everywhere.